I suppose that I wanted to know why, for those of you who are listening new, this project started back in the days of COVID, um, when I was doing a lot of work with poetry, Shakespeare and stuff. And it was really just, I was just bemused as I entered my, what was I then, mid 60s, and I was considering um, not so much considering what had gone wrong, because really not what who could, that would have been pretentious, because who can say what's gone wrong and what's not gone wrong, but I would just say surprised at outcomes during my lifetime, um, and mostly because I had none of the roadmaps, not a religious roadmap, not a very well grounded educational one. I grew up in the States, went to school in the States in the late 60s, early 70s, which is a bit of a thrill. And when I say school, I mean high school, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I had been brought up in the Middle East, Iraq, for 2.5 years, and then 5 years in Trinidad in the West Indies, during which time my parents split up shortly after coming to the United States when I was 11. All, as I'll discuss, sort of upheavals. But it really isn't until this last year that things have really hit the fan, and obviously they've hit the fan for everybody worldwide. We've had ups and downs economically. That's never really affected me at all. I just sort of kept bowling along. But I think all of us in our individual variable ways are affected by what's happened culturally and the wars. Because I have to say, if you were like me, if you were in your mid-teens, in the mid-70s, you thought that the world was not going to look like this. There was so many realizations that happened in the late 60s. So many great human beings had come, and many of them had been murdered worldwide. For every Martin Luther King, there was a Stephen Biko, etc. So, so that's context. Now it's getting tough. Did I know it would? Did I expect someone would say, oh, yes? Would I have felt better? Noam Chomsky said something really interesting recently, depressing, I guess, but on recent events may be true. Chomsky, as a caution, he offers that which cannot be received, really, by his civilization, and I feel a bit like that today myself. Anyway, he said he has a friend who is a brilliant scientist and theorizes that there are lots of other planets with intelligent life on them within contactable reach, but we've not found them. My sister then joked that they have seen what we were up to and hid. But Noam's conclusion is that they have destroyed themselves the way we are destroying ourselves. He thinks that we are intelligent enough to do that, but not intelligent enough to get beyond it. And are we indeed? And by the way, the crazy thing about Chomsky in my mind is he is a person above all else of common sense. There's nothing lurid or peculiar or out of reach for anybody in what he says. Rather like the person who said of capitalism that if you take greed, one of the 7 sins, and make it the core of your society, you are stupid. Not because it is a sin, but it is inconsistent with a meaningful existence. And the jury has come in on meaningful existence. Its many variations make people happy. It reaches to places where endeavors and lusts don't. Other endeavors and lusts don't. And I mean meaningful full, 2 words, full of meaning. I realized last night that I should have expected this cul-de-sac I am in. I didn't. An unconventional life unaddressed will do that. I might have addressed it, but I didn't, the unconventionality. I might have straightened out the twisted, but I didn't. Many agreed upon things did not happen. As I remember my childhood, as my siblings remember the same, we were in constant upheaval, like the refugee experience may be today, and without stable parenting. The interesting bit of my point is that I have found the memory of this past a source of great joy. I remember a lot of sitting in the sun. There is a new meme on social media, photos of dogs sitting on beaches looking out to sea. What are they thinking and feeling is the question as the waves lap their furry little bums. They look entirely content, and I see them and I remember it. Is it Dharma? D-H-A-R-M-A? Perhaps the process of reconciling the turbulences of this childhood are at the core of me. To survive was work well done. Walkabout work. Look it up. And then sitting on some beach, and now I am seeing the distances that have grown between myself and people who were either not so tried or were and have felt all the negative fully of such deprivation, have disappeared into addictions or therapies, which is not to disdain therapy, ! But to suggest the therapeutic process might be better understood as the good fight, a voyage of discovery inward that would do us all a world of good and not the last resort of those who cannot cope. This leads me centrally back, the assumed healthy contingent of our people, the ones who are thriving in the current system, seem more drugged than happy, anesthetized than untroubled, and we know they are. For instance, the successful West is monotheist, the one that fights justifiable wars, justifiable by the lights of a singular God. We of the West should all read Deuteronomy, toot sweet, and see ourselves in it clearly. I did again recently and found it a horror. It is an urging in my DNA almost to accept what really is abominable. It is the creation of myth, of tribalism, gone way wrong, narcissistically wrong. It is the root of our indoctrination, the handbook and moral justifier of genocide ever since. It is a love song to the obedience of an obscene will, and cowardly. My sister, my great friend, resisted last night something I said about religion, offering Hinduism, about which I know virtually nothing. I know there's a pantheon, possibly because it would have been shrouded by my culture, hidden from me, and put on the mumbo-jumbo shelf, as we did with most things not us. As she described it, it sounded very dharmic, very dog and beach. Alexander the Great adopted a Hindu seer, or the seer adopted him. What a movie that would be, people. I guess it was easy then because the pagan Greek and the Hindu were adopters, where the monotheisms only kill by dint of Deuteronomy. My brother just sent me some information on a sortition movement going on in Britain. I have known about the concept for about 5 years now, but I am slow. It is from Aristotle. It makes me feel really good, like Chomsky common sense, and I hope it gets a grip. It has taken 2,000 years, and some probably because the notion is almost intolerable to us. If you are listening or reading this and don't know what sortition is, a definition is easily found, and it's also being covered quite well on YouTube by Brian Hennig. And maybe it has slept so long the way Hinduism has been hushed. Our cultural temples won't allow these rather obvious philosophies in the building. I just researched a bit about the US version of the Sortition Foundation. There is a series of TED Talks by Brett Hennig. Fascinating. Australian. The TED Talks are less interesting than his Q&As, which are very, very profound. We are so Plato, enlightened princes, elitist to the bone. Brings me back to my original intent. My brother offers it as evidence of progress, where I see it as hopeful but fraught. Our system of politics serves us too well in our undiscovered state, our life without meaning. There will be a reaction like there has been with the Labour Party and maybe the Democratic Party. Labour seemed such a great and necessary adaptation of a slowly democratizing West, and look what happened. Nationalism is the religion of colonialism, and solidarity with the presumed worldwide working class is just not on. It might have been on, but we missed it. Tony Blair was a symptom, not a cause. Very nice man with a deep penchant for war. I wish we could sortition war, but war is the very essence of obedience. See Deuteronomy. Up until the last election, I had been uneasy with this drift. Almost all the cozy assurances about commonalities are now gone. It is okay. It is good to know. It is good to see the distances ahead, even as they grow greater rather than less. Now, I'll not always be sitting on the beach. Trust me, I haven't done to date. My works are great, but I know it's there, the beach, and its value, its eternity, huge. Maybe why I love dogs and their wisdom. If I was afraid of my fellow citizens, I'd own a gun. Somebody rained on this notion based on where I lived, but my neighbors are armed to the teeth, and I have lived many places, sir. My socialism has little to do essentially with fairness, not really. I don't think much of money beyond enough. There is no self in wealth, real self. Actually, the opposite, as Jesus Jesus often said. These compulsions or lack of are not grounded in justice or religion or virtue. Something else is in their place in me. So there is no room for them at the inn of my heart.